All right. Well, I think we can get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today here at We Still Move. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction. My name is Joe, and I'm one of the co-directors for We Still Move. We are a community-based organization cultivating well-being and resilience through and joy through movement and the healing arts. Our trauma-informed program is by and for queer people of the global majority, centering and celebrating ancestral wisdom and emergent practices. We envision a world where embodiment paves the way for community and possibility, creating culturally affirming spaces to reconnect with ourselves and each other. And I'll pass it
Yeah,
to my colleague here, Misha.
awesome. Thank you. I'm still kind of navigating a few things that are loading, but I am going to talk a little bit about our Healing Artist Network in general, and then our switch to kind of this kind of monthly format that's kind of consisted of like an Instagram live video, a workshop, just continued kind of like engagement with our community. So care rituals at home. Our way of shifting our programming to meet the current need, and with the attacks on our communities from the ICE occupation, multiple other just kind of have made it unsafe for our communities. Programming can be attended from wherever are most safe. And then to talk a little bit about our Healing Artist Network is a partnership and kind of community, a growing network of over 25 Black healing arts practitioners to support the well-being community healers. Together, we're nurturing collective care, culturally rooted and culturally affirming healing practices that sustain our collective resilience. And so I'll hand it back off to Joe to get started.
And so we've transitioned, and we're really excited to host this interview today with one of our healing practitioners. So I'm so happy to introduce Sanyu Estelle, a
Hello.
hello, clear knowing soothsayer, truth teller, that is also known as the word witch because of her deep love for word origins, etymology, and word culture philology. Said that right. So welcome, Sanyu. Thank you for being here and joining us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here with y'all in time and space.
And so, as we've talked, we're gonna just dive into your story, your journey with this healing practice. And so, we'll start with the first question: is what healing arts do you practice, and can you share a little about them to our audience?
Yes, yes. I am, what healing arts do I practice? This is a good question. I am Taoist and I also practice Ifa Isheshe. And so that doesn't actually mean that you would divine or practice divination in those practices, even if you practice those faith systems. But I happen to as well. So like in Ifa Sheshe, that would be like cowries. There's other forms of divination depending on what branch of the practice that you are doing. And then in Taoism, that's the Yijing. And so I cast the Yijing. I'm also a card reader, tarot cards, oracle cards, playing cards, any cards. I imagine I could do Pokemon cards, but I have not tried that before. And I also use pendulums, crystals, uh, pendulums to divine. So those are the kind of practices, modalities, and including direct channeling, vocal channeling, that combined together come and present themselves as a healing art. But which practice I pull from would really depend on like the question, the circumstances, the practitioner, like the practice, not the practitioner, but the person seeking out the practice.
It seems like, you've come to be able to dive into many different healing practices. And so I guess we're curious of how did it all start? Was there like a moment in time where you're just like, this is what I need to be doing? Was it, how was there a catalyzing moment in your journey that affirmed you on your path?
Yes, I think there are like a few catalyzing journeys. I think having a good memory of my dreaming from an early age and documenting my dreams from an early age, because some being in a dream when I was like in preschool or just going into kindergarten was like, you should write down your dreams in my dream. And I was like, I can't write. And like, then I asked my mom to teach me to write in order partially to do that, but also it ended up being the beginning of like my writing practice and my storytelling practice and my ability to communicate in that way and my love for words, obviously. And so that element has always been there and I think has kept me like very porous and open in terms of other kinds of spiritual practices I've come upon. So I was raised Episcopalian. Okay. I had to go to church every Sunday. I wasn't sick until I was 18. So like that wasn't an option. But and I like my church and I still have friends from the church and I love sermons, but like I wasn't getting what I needed out of the faith. Like I had bigger questions, you know, there was like bigger fish to fry than like I was feeling were being met in the cosmology. And so
Mm.
when I went away for college or whatever, or when I left high school and I had the freedom to choose what I would practice, I eventually came upon Taoism, and that practice has been very supportive for me. It's been the longest spiritual practice that I've maintained on my own, which is like at this point 15 years, even though I just started reading the I Ching in the last year. I took 14 years of being Taoist before I even ever thought of casting the hexagrams for myself. Um, and then the last thing would be like after I graduated in '09, which was after the last like stock market crash recession situation. And so people who graduated in that period from college had to deal with like a lot of unemployment. And so I was unemployed for a year after college, which was tough, especially being
Mm.
in LA because you know how expensive it is. And
Yeah.
yes, exactly. You all been here, so you all know. And I got through a series of what obviously in now in retrospect were like destiny oriented events, like a series of odd things happened. And for that reason, I got a temp job at VCA corporate office, Veterinary Centers of America, Blue Animal Hospital Science. It's the biggest animal corporation in North America. And that temp job was 6 months for someone on maternity leave. And then as I was walking home from that temp job one day, I was just like, existence, like I'm so stressed, you know, like I need to figure out work and like, you know, something, send me a sign. I was like, make it clear, make it obvious, like send me a sign. And probably within the week of me saying that, I was walking home. I always walk the same way home because I'm a creature of habit because my moon and Mars are in Taurus. And walking down this path I would walk down all the time, I saw a murder of crows, you know, like maybe let's say 30 to 40 crows in the street. And I thought, you know, okay, well, there must be like food in the street or something because like crows aren't dumb. And this is like in the middle of a street that cars go down and they were all cawing and I looked down and they weren't eating anything. And then a car drove by and all the crows lifted together and then landed together. And then I really knew there was no food on the ground. And then they landed, they just kept cawing. And I remember walking down the block and like looking back and being like, that was so weird, you know, and thinking how weird that was all the way home. And then eventually got home and on like the 2010 internet, on like 2010 internet, I searched probably in Google for all intents and purposes for crow medicine. And in searching for crow medicine, I came upon this website it was a tripod website, which if you were born in the 1900s, tripod like AOL was like one of the first ever website hosts. So that means it was like an OG fucking website. And it also hadn't been updated in 10 years. So it hadn't been updated since 2000. And a lot of the links were dead and the email wasn't working, but the crow medicine link worked. And I read that and it was like very accurate. And so I spent the next 5 months hunting down the person who wrote that And then I found her and she became my mentor. And
Oh,
that began the journey of what would end up being a
Wow.
spiritual practice. It's a good
incredible.
story.
That's amazing. It's really tapping into our
Fantastic.
environment
Yes.
and getting guidance from our other relatives. And
Mm-hmm.
that's an incredible journey.
Yes. I'm enjoying it. So far so good. I mean it's confusing and there's ups and downs and I don't always know what I'm doing, but I'm glad to be here.
Mm.
One thing that you mentioned that stuck out, you mentioned Taoism, longest running kind of practice that out of a lot of the ones um, that you've explored. Is there anything in particular resonated that just to kind of that like um, yeah, that sense of like consistent continuing to practice it for that long.
Yeah, I think that Taoism, okay, what, like, first and foremost, obviously, I'm not raised in like China or Taiwan or places that are classically Taoist. So I'm not having like the classical Taoist education. I didn't come to it
Mm,
through, let's say, formality or through, um, or even like lineage, right? Like it wasn't being practiced in my home or something. Because I think if I had had some other person's experience of Taoism in the way that I had other people's experiences, like say Christianity, I'm not sure if it would have fulfilled the same purpose for me. But because I came to it through martial arts at the time, doing Qigong and Tai Chi, um, it was a part, they were martial artists who were Taoist. So I was just exposed to Taoist philosophy and Taoist texts because I was in martial arts practice. And even though I eventually dropped the martial arts practice, I kept the Taoism because I found that there was a lot of uh, overarching wisdom. And the reason I even chose Taoism and the reason I chose Ifa or Isheshe is because they are like macro practices. They're not micro practices. They're not practices that
mm,
require isolation. They
Mhm.
are not
mm,
monotheistic practices. They are not theistic practices. Technically, there's no God in Taoism, and technically, there's actually no God in Ifa. But people will refer to them as God and goddesses colloquially to help people understand, but they're like more like accurately archetypes. They're seen as like
mm,
energetic representations of things, not actual like beings. Um, but they have embodiments on earth, right? And that's what we call like the Orisha. So the both of those practices for me have the most reach. They hold the most space. They have the greatest ability to address everything I've been going through. So the reason I kept Taoism is because in times of trouble, I could like read the Tao Te Ching or I could read any of my Taoist texts and feel some sort of wisdom, guidance, or comfort through the practice. And it didn't require me being in practice with other Taoists. Like even when you're reading Taoist philosophers, a lot of them are like, you know, you can't really
mm,
say that you are Taoist. You can say that you practice Taoism. You can say that you follow the Tao, but like they're like, what the fuck is a Taoist? Like your experience is your experience. Everybody else's experience is their experience, and the Tao is holding space for it all. So all you can do is like master your experience essentially.
mhm,
Um, and so I just found that an attractive philosophy. Also that it's old and that it's like poetic. You know, the Tao Te Ching is
mm,
easily one of the most like beautiful texts I feel I've read. And I took religious courses. I like read the Upanishads and I read other texts that also have very beautiful writing. But Taoism was like the cleanest, clearest, most direct, and in my opinion, most honest practice that I've come that I've been practicing for the longest. Obviously, then eventually I came to Ifa and Isheshe, and I come to other things like more, I don't know, like earthly, worldly things like Bashar and like having very strange experiences with like alien shit and like things like that, that eventually expanded my awareness of things. But the cool thing about Taoism and Ifa is like they don't preclude things being off Earth. Like they don't have an issue with that in those cosmologies. They're like, first of all, Nepal, they're like, yeah, we came from off Earth. Like we are not from there, motherfucker. And with Taoism, there's lots of myths about, you know, who's the masters and who Lao Tzu is and like all these things. But in Taoism, they're just like, look, there's this experience we're having and we're included in it. And it has, you know, things we prefer and things we don't prefer. And like our work is to navigate that for the rest of our lives. I find like that is a very comforting way to practice being alive.
Yeah, and
Long
you know,
story short.
and yeah, long, yeah, yes, it's been a long journey, and you know, you know, diving into all this cosmologies, you know, I kind of, if anybody doesn't know, Sanyu just does amazing readings and is really a truth teller,
Thank you.
and so with that journey you just shared with us, how would you say that kind of navigates through the work that you provide, you know, people, and what are the impacts that has this practice have on the people you serve, and the community, and you know, that you've seen, you know, that you've given these practices to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that because I'm from a okay, I mean, the funny thing is, even though Taoism is technically, let's say, like a Chinese, Asian, Taiwanese spiritual practice, it's not a proselytizing practice, right? Neither is Ifa Isheshe. So neither of these practices are practices that recruit. It
Hmm.
doesn't, they're like, you have to come to the practice. And even then, the practice may be like, you know, in the same way you see like, you know, any master of martial arts movie where they're like, get the fuck out of my house. The master's like, get the fuck out of here. Don't come back until you keep coming back and keep coming back. And eventually they're like, okay, you can come in, you know, like, so there's this quality in these practices where they're like, we don't need you. Like, if you need us, then that will be evident. But like, it's not something where there's not insecurity in these practices, right? In both Taoism and Ifa Sheshe, your human beings are supposed to exist. It's not by accident. It's not a mistake. It's not a moral error. It's it's time and space operating as usual, right? So from cosmologies like this, it I keep an open mind, obviously. I know that from a Taoist perspective, everything that I experience is a part of the Tao, which means that it is the Tao having a conversation with me. And so even if I don't prefer it or don't like it or don't it's not useful to me directly, there is still something that I can do with it depending on what I choose to believe about it, right? So what I would say that is important is because I understand existence takes all kinds. And knowing that as a reader, I take all kinds, right? I've always said to people, if Ifa told me or if the Yi Jing told me, I would give a reading to someone who considered themselves consider themselves my worst enemy, right? Because I always like to joke, as a Taoist, I don't have enemies. Enemies have me. Like, I'm not spending my time creating a narrative about shit I don't like. Like, I'm moving in forward in life towards shit I like. I don't have enemies. They have me. If they want me, I don't want them. And so in that practice, you know, I have a lot of capacity to talk to people almost in every sort of state of being, right? Like, I have talked people down from bad acid trips. I have talked to people who think that they are cursed by demons, right? I've talked to people who think that they are intergalactic star seeds of the seventh dimension, realm, and time, you know. And for me, it doesn't really matter what they believe about themselves. What matters more is what they are coming to me to try to understand, right? Because something I say as a soothsayer is my job is not to tell you what your truth is. My job is to help you figure out your truth so you can tell it yourself, right? Like, and also all truths are true from different perspectives. Everybody's truth is different. So like a part of that practice is I can talk to somebody who comes from a Jehovah's Witness background. I can talk to somebody who comes from a Buddhist background, and I can talk to an atheist. And in talking to all of them, I have something for each of them because I'm not committed to any particular perspective. And the practices that I practice don't require that other things that aren't practiced within that practice don't exist. Right. So this makes me approachable for a lot of people. There was an era, I feel like I was having a lot of people who were like, I've never had a reading before. And I'm like, oh, I'll be gentle. I'm a very nice first time. I'm not gonna, the death card doesn't mean you're gonna die. Like, we're gonna get into things that are more nuanced. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it helps me just have a particular approach, even though, even I'm always Taoist, right? But like, I'm not always casting the I Ching, right? And I'm always practitioner of Isheshe or Ifa, or I should say I'm always practicing Taoism and I'm always a practitioner of Isheshe and Ifa, but I'm not allowed to cast the cowries for any but very particular situations, right? And with the Yijing, you can't just be like, let me see what the vibe of the day. The Yijing is like, have a question or back the fuck off, right? Like, don't ask. If you haven't got no questions, I don't want to be touched, right? And there's something about also with the Yijing where it wants to be like up and away. Like, it's supposed to be out of sight, out of mind. The practice is supposed to be both embodied, not just divinatory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the practice is always coming through in some way or another, even though my main medium, or the thing that people hire me the most for, is card readings. And also I'm looking over here because I have like 50 decks over here, right? So I let the deck choose the person. There's a lot of like variety in my style. And I think that is in even indicative of my spiritual practices, being as different as they are. Asian and African traditions are not that different, but
Right.
let's just say geographically speaking, they're far away from each other.
Right. No, I think that's yeah, that for someone who doesn't really was new, I think you were probably one of the first that gave me a card reading, and I remember it feeling like, how does it get started? How do we, and it was a very gentle, and I really enjoyed being that idea that the cards choose me, and so
Mm-hmm.
that starts building a relationship, and so yeah. And I know this isn't part of our questions, but I'm very curious about this. How do you prepare yourself? Like, how do you get ready to be able to enter this space with someone you don't know? And I know the cards are coming through and all of these, practices, but yeah, how do you feel like when you set up? How do you prepare for that encounter and that channeling?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're in my altar space, right? Like, I work from here. I work from the ground. I work in a seated position, a cross-legged position, I should say. So whenever I'm in my own space, I am prepared. Like, it's not something I really have to do. I always have like wake up in the morning, I greet my ori, I do morning prayers. I'm always asking that everybody I encounter is finding a way to reflect upon our encounter in a way that allows them to be the version of themselves that they most prefer, their most authentic self, which is their most powerful self. I'm always hoping for people that they become more connected with their destiny, more connected with their present reality, and more responsible for themselves, right? Like, that they feel that they can respond to their circumstances. They are able to respond to their circumstances. So that is a day-to-day kind of space that I hold for people. But in terms of like before reading, I used to, especially when I was a newbie at professionally reading like 10 years ago, not just personally reading, which was like 15 years ago. But at that time I had like a whole ritual and all these things I had to do before. And now it's just like everything's already consecrated. If something doesn't want to be used, it will tell me because I asked, right? Even pendulums will be like, we're done, right? And I could just have gotten it and been like, but we haven't been together that long. And they were like, we're move on. And I'm like, so I just respect it, right? So I'll move on to another pendulum. So there's a natural recycling order that happens. And it allows me to sort of carry the energy with me. Also, because my reading, I give the reading you need, not necessarily the reading you want. And because I tell people, I'm a truth teller, which, has its own sort of boundary keeping, right? Because a lot of people think truth is a bad thing. So, or they think their truth, knowing the truth, what existence thinks about them or what someone who has the ability to know that would think about them would be a bad thing. Right? Because a lot of people are like, I'm scared. I'm like, why do you think I'm not your inner critic? I'm not going to tell you those things. Like,
Right.
that's not the truth. Like, but it does keep certain people away from me, which is great. Because if you don't want, because if you want to be my client, then you shouldn't be my client. And so that's its own sort of barrier, natural barrier. But ultimately, I trust that anyone who is sitting down with me has agreed with me before incarnation that encounter would take place, because a part of my cosmology is trusting existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not assuming, like, I was just laughing with a internet friend because she was saying that, she grew up in Santeria and all these practices and everyone practiced it. And she was like the atheist, and now she's practicing it, and everybody's like, how do you know you're not talking to the devil? And I'm like, why would you assume? First of all, it's very self-important of you, because the devil's busy and has like bigger fish to fry. Like, there are worse people than you. I promise. Okay, this is Earth. Okay, this is Earth. There's definitely somebody worse than you. And then also, like, what are you doing that you would be needing to talk to the devil? Like, why would it be the devil? So I'm just never in a position where I'm presuming the worst of myself or existence or the circumstances. And so I'm not presuming the worst of anyone who sits down with me. Now, there are people who sit down with me that I don't vibe with. I've sat down with some like very arrogant people and it's very interesting. But at the same time, if I know who I am and I'm 100% myself, what else can you do with me? Right? So my job isn't to change anyone outside of me. My job is to become more of myself in the situation as needed, right? Whatever that means to the version of me that I am at the time, which will change. And then see what happens, right? And I've had people, like, I could count, and I'm doing much more readings now because I work in a shop, but like before then, I could count on two hands the number of people out of thousands of readings who were like, I don't like this. This shit doesn't make any sense. And you're a terrible reader. Like, I can maybe like 10. Now that I work in a shop, there's been more people who in the first 5 minutes of a reading, you're allowed to get up if it's not your vibe. And so I have had a few more people get up than that, right? So now let's say I can count on four hands out of thousands of clients over 10 years, the number of people who are like, this is not doing it for me. But that, I think, is natural selection. Like, if you need someone who's like speaking in star seed, crystal, Pleiadian and Andromedan energy, like language, there are readers like that. And I'm not that. So like, if you know that from yourself and you sit down with me, that's great, right? But for the most part, I think that the preparation happens very naturally by just even being the version of yourself who would show up in that place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. Yeah. I don't
That's
want
exciting.
question.
Sorry.
I could keep going.
Yeah.
An hour with you, Sanyu.
I'm happy to spend all the time with y'all. No worries. What are you going to say, Misha?
I was going to say, I know we are coming up already on the half hour. It just feels wild. But the last question I wanted to have, I feel like there are so many different directions we can go. I think as far as what we've explored to share with us today. Uh, I know there's a workshop that that you're hosting the 19th. What can people expect in that experience? Kind of knowing the things we've touched on, to like tracing, the path and the journey from then to now, and what we can expect
Yeah,
next week.
absolutely. So I don't remember what I called it. Something like navigating yourself in chaotic times or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember what I named the workshop, but basically it is a distillation of my quantum energetics methodology, which is using yourself as a form of divination, right? Using your experience in your life and your preferences and your passions as a way of like literally knowing what to do. Um, and also, uh, there's tools that I have in quantum energetics, right? Like there's 9 tools that I've constructed that people can apply to their lives, to themselves in order to navigate life. So the workshop's going to be kind of a distillation of that because we don't have the same kind of time. I'm going to sort of instead be tool forward and sort of talk to people about the tools. And my hope is that people can bring whatever is actually going on in their life, whatever. Thank you, is it moon rising? Moon rising, yes. Uh, Guidance in chaotic times. Your experience is guidance in chaotic times. So my hope is people will bring their experience in these chaotic times. Share it in the chat, share it directly with me, share it anonymously, whatever you want to do, share it anonymously with Misha. And what I will do is literally apply one of the tools to that actual issue and explain to someone, this is how I would work through this, right? Because if you're supposed to exist, then you're supposed to take up the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. That is your reality, right? That's the only way that you're a part of this reality. You take up space and time. And if you're supposed to take up space and time, then that means you're supposed to have a fucking personality. And if you're supposed to have a fucking personality, that means you're supposed to be yourself. And if you're supposed to be yourself, that means that you're supposed to navigate yourself authentically. And that means that no matter what happens to you in the experience of that self, it must be a part of the experience that you're supposed to have because it happened, and we're trusting existence in my cosmology, right? That's one basis of my practice. We're going to use existence to trust existence because we're still using existence when we don't trust existence, right? So we're going to start using it in the affirmative and figuring out how much influence you can actually have over a situation when you feel like you are supposed to have influence versus if you are trying to put a square into a circle hole and control the circumstances, right? You will know that through applying these tools. So in the workshop, you'll learn basically how like porous and like flexible are existence's boundaries with me. Like how much of my reality has to be here, especially if I don't prefer it, right? Because if you do prefer that aspect of the reality, you're not questioning it. It's not up for debate. You're doing that thing, right? You're already secure in that. But what you're not secure in is something that you're supposed to shore up, and you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to shore it up, but if you want to, that's what we're going to be doing in the workshop. So bring your troubles, and we will resolve them to the best of our ability.
Yeah. Well, we are looking forward to that class and our continual work together. And so, lastly, where can people find you? I know there's SanyuEstelle.com, but are there other places that people can come? Your shop that you mentioned or
Yes.
IG.
Yes. Fortunately, I'm on almost everything. I am Sanyu Estelle. So obviously we're on IG here, if you're seeing this here. So that's Sanyu Estelle, right? On Threads, I'm Sanyu Estelle. On TikTok, I'm Sanyu Estelle. I'm not on Twitter. On Substack, I'm Sanyu Estelle. On YouTube, I'm Sanyu Estelle. My website is Sanyu Estelle. So that is how you find me. My email is sanyu@sanyuestelle.com. So, just my name and you'll find your way to me. And I hope you show up for our workshop and that you work with We Still Move through all of the different projects. And thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, everybody. This will be, Misha is going to post it real soon. So if we didn't, you didn't get a chance to stay on or even see it, you'll be able to see it. It'll live in our IG. And we'll be sending out more information via IG and also email if you're in our newsletter, more about the workshop coming up. And yeah, we have a lot more in store for you all in our care rituals at home. And so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon, a couple weeks.
Yeah. See you all later. Bye. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. And see you soon. Bye.
Bye.